Most people are walking into battles with diplomacy textbooks while everyone else brought weapons. You think playing fair will protect you. It won't. Machiavelli spent his life studying why good people lose and ruthless people win, and what he discovered will disturb you. If you've ever felt crushed by someone who had no problem doing what you couldn't, this changes everything. In the next 20 minutes, you'll learn the protection system that keeps you from being destroyed by those who already understand these rules. You've been there. You worked harder than your colleague, but they got the promotion because they knew exactly when to take credit for team wins. You were honest in that negotiation while the other person lied smoothly and walked away with everything. You gave someone the benefit of the doubt, and they interpreted your mercy as weakness and exploited it further. Here's what's devastating. You were taught that being good, fair, and honest would protect you. That integrity is armor, that the universe rewards noble behavior. So when ruthless people crushed you, you internalized it as personal failure. I should have seen it coming. I'm too trusting. Something's wrong with me. Nothing is wrong with you. You've been playing checkers while they've been playing chess. You thought you were in a collaboration when you were actually in a competition. And here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to say out loud. The world doesn't reward kindness. It rewards strategic action. Your empathy isn't a flaw, but your naivety about how others weaponize your empathy is destroying you. Right now, someone in your life knows exactly how to manipulate you. They've identified your moral constraints as tactical weaknesses. While you're worried about being fair, they're calculating 3 moves ahead. This isn't cynicism. This is pattern recognition based on 500 years of documented human behavior since Machiavelli wrote the manual everyone else is secretly reading. In 1513, Niccolò Machiavelli wrote The Prince after being tortured and exiled for his political beliefs. He had lost everything. And from that devastation, he documented something that makes modern psychology uncomfortable. Successful people operate by completely different rules than what they tell you to follow. Machiavelli didn't invent manipulation. He simply had the courage to write down what powerful people already knew. And here's why this matters to you. Research in social psychology confirms what Machiavelli observed. Studies on game theory, specifically the iterated prisoner's dilemma, show that pure cooperation gets exploited while pure aggression creates retaliation. The winning strategy is calculated reciprocity, cooperation with teeth. Dr. Robert Hare's research on corporate psychopathy found that approximately 4% of executives display psychopathic traits, which is 4 times higher than the general population. These individuals rise to power specifically because they're not constrained by the same moral boundaries you are. They've internalized what Machiavelli taught. But here's what everyone misses. Machiavelli wasn't teaching you to become a predator. He was teaching you to stop being prey. There's a massive difference between ruthless strategy and cruelty, between calculated protection and chaos, between power and brutality. We're going to break this into 3 levels that transform how you operate in reality. Level 1. Recognition. You'll learn to identify the invisible game being played around you. Most people don't even know they're in a strategic environment until they've already lost. Level 2. Protection. You'll develop specific tactical responses that neutralize manipulation without destroying your integrity. This is where you stop losing. Level 3. Mastery. You'll learn to hold strategic advantage while maintaining the moral high ground. This is where you transcend the game entirely. This isn't about becoming someone you hate. It's about developing the strategic intelligence that prevents your goodness from being weaponized against you. By the end of this, you'll see the world as it actually operates, not as you were told it operates. And that awareness is the difference between being broken and being unbreakable. Machiavelli's first principle. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. This is the foundation of why you keep losing. You assume authenticity and transparency everywhere. They don't. Let me show you the psychological mechanism you're missing. It's called the fundamental attribution error, and it's destroying you daily. When you make a mistake, you attribute it to circumstances. I was stressed, I didn't have enough time, the situation was complicated. But when others make mistakes, you attribute it to their character. They're careless, they don't care, they're incompetent. Here's the trap. You extend the same generous interpretation to others' strategic actions. When someone takes credit for your work, you think, maybe they didn't realize, maybe they forgot, maybe it was miscommunication. You're giving them the circumstantial excuse, but they're not making mistakes. They're making strategic choices. And your generous interpretation is exactly what allows it to continue. Machiavelli observed this in Renaissance politics, and neuroscience now confirms it. Humans are wired for in-group trust. Your brain releases oxytocin during cooperative interactions, which literally blinds you to exploitation signals. You feel good when collaborating, so your threat detection systems go offline. Ruthless operators know this instinctively. They trigger your cooperation chemistry while executing extraction strategies. Watch this pattern. You're in a meeting. You propose an idea. Nobody responds enthusiastically. 2 weeks later, your manager presents the same idea as their own, and everyone loves it. Your first thought? Maybe I didn't communicate it well. Maybe they thought of it independently. Wrong. They waited to see if you'd fight for it. When you didn't, they took it. That was a test, not a coincidence. This is pattern recognition versus pattern creation. Here's the aha moment that changes everything. Most people aren't neutral. In any strategic environment, workplace, relationships, social dynamics, people are either building their position or maintaining their position. There's no neutral. If you're not consciously building your position, you're unconsciously weakening it, and others are consciously strengthening theirs relative to yours. Machiavelli wrote, "Men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that one who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived." You've been allowing it because you were taught that suspicion is negative. It's not. Strategic awareness is survival, or ours. It's CA. Consider this case study. 2 employees, equal performance. One sends weekly updates to leadership, highlighting wins. One does great work quietly. After a year, the first gets promoted. The second feels bitter. I did better work. But leadership operates on information availability, not objective reality. The first employee understood Machiavellian principle. Perception management is more powerful than performance alone. You've been taught this is unfair. It's not fair or unfair. It's operational reality. And until you recognize the game being played, you cannot protect yourself within it. Now you see the battlefield. Let's build your defenses. Machiavelli's protection framework has 3 components: boundaries, calculated reciprocity, and strategic opacity. Boundaries. The mercy paradox. Machiavelli said, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But here's what modern psychology adds. Fear without boundaries creates retaliation. Love without boundaries creates exploitation. The protection mechanism is bounded cooperation. Here's how you implement this immediately. The next time someone asks for something that costs you, your time, your resources, your credit, you pause and assess their reciprocity history. Have they supported you? Have they respected your previous boundaries? If yes, cooperate. If no, this script becomes your shield. I'd like to help, but I'm at capacity right now. Let me know if you'd like to discuss how we can support each other systematically moving forward. Watch what happens. Genuine collaborators will respect this and engage in reciprocal discussion. Extractors will become irritated, pressure you, or disappear. They just revealed themselves. The moment you introduce reciprocity language, you've shifted from prey to protected. Calculated reciprocity. The tit-for-tat strategy. Game theory research by Robert Axelrod identified the most successful strategy in competitive environments. Start cooperatively, then mirror what others do. Cooperate with cooperators. Defect against defectors. This is Machiavellian protection in mathematical form. In practice, your colleague doesn't share information that would help you, even though you've shared with them multiple times. Your instinct is to keep being generous, hoping they'll change. They won't. Machiavelli's approach. You stop sharing non-essential information with them, not dramatically, not emotionally, just strategically. When they ask why you didn't include them on something, you use this language. Oh, I thought you preferred to work independently based on our previous projects. You've mirrored their behavior without hostility. You've created a consequence without creating an enemy. The relationship either corrects toward reciprocity or naturally distances. Either outcome protects you. Strategic opacity, the information weapon. Machiavelli understood that vulnerability is currency. The more people know about your strategies, resources, and plans, the more leverage they have. Modern organizations call this information asymmetry, and it's the primary source of power in every negotiation. You've been taught that transparency builds trust. Sometimes it does. Often it creates exploitation opportunities. Here's the protection framework. Share outcomes and successes publicly. Keep strategies and vulnerabilities private or selectively shared only with proven allies. Scenario. You're job searching while employed. Your workplace friend asks if you're looking elsewhere. Your instinct is honesty. Yeah, I've been interviewing. Machiavellian protection. I'm always open to the right opportunities, but I'm focused on this project right now. You've been honest without creating a vulnerability. If they're truly your friend, that answer satisfies them. If they're positioning themselves for your role, you've given them nothing to weaponize. The instant protection response system. The moment someone violates a boundary, makes a strategic extraction, or tests your position, your response window is critical. Delayed responses signal uncertainty and invite escalation. Immediate, calm responses establish deterrence. Someone takes credit for your work in a meeting. Old you. Stay silent. Bring it up later privately. Hope leadership noticed. New you. In the moment, with a smile. Thanks for highlighting that. Name. I'm glad the approach I developed is resonating. You've reclaimed credit without aggression. You've demonstrated awareness without hostility. This is sophisticated ruthlessness, not cruelty, not retaliation, strategic correction. You're teaching people in real time what succeeds and what fails when they interact with you. The non-negotiable principle. Machiavelli observed that merciful princes who failed to punish betrayal were eventually destroyed by repeated betrayals. Modern psychology calls this extinction burst testing. When you establish a boundary, people will test it aggressively before accepting it. Your response to that test determines your future. Someone misses a deadline that affects you, apologizes, says it won't happen again. It happens again. Old you. It's okay. I understand. You've just taught them that your boundaries have no consequences. New you. I need reliability in our collaboration. If this continues, I'll need to adjust our working relationship. Then follow through. Either they correct, or you route around them. You've protected your position. Most people stop at protection. They learn not to lose. Mastery is learning to position yourself so advantageously that competition becomes irrelevant. This is where Machiavelli transcends tactics and enters strategy, the perception architecture. Machiavelli wrote, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves." This is the dual-mode operating system that separates masters from everyone else. Fox mode is strategic intelligence, you see, the traps, the positioning, the hidden games. Lion mode is demonstrable capability when necessary. You can deploy overwhelming force. The mastery is knowing which mode to use when, and more importantly, making others uncertain which mode you're in at any moment. Here's how you architect this. You develop a reputation for being collaborative and supportive 80% of the time. This builds goodwill and lowers others' guard. But 20% of the time, when someone violates core boundaries or attempts strategic exploitation, your response is immediate, disproportionate to the offense, and public enough to create legend. Example: a colleague repeatedly interrupts you in meetings, talks over you, dismisses your input. Most people either tolerate it or complain to HR privately. Mastery response: the next time they interrupt, you stop mid-sentence, make direct eye contact, and say calmly, "I'm going to finish my thought, and then I'm interested in your perspective." Then you continue as if nothing happened. This seems small, but watch what happens psychologically. Everyone in that room just saw you establish dominance without aggression. The interrupter has to choose, escalate, and look unstable, or back down and accept the boundary. Either way, you've demonstrated lion mode. That story spreads. Future interactions with everyone who heard about it are pre-framed. You've created strategic deterrence, the alliance matrix. Machiavelli's survival, despite exile and torture, came from his ability to position himself as valuable to multiple competing powers simultaneously. This is advanced positioning. You're never dependent on a single source of security, validation, or resource. In your workplace, this means cultivating relationships across departments, not just up your management chain. The person in operations who controls scheduling, the executive assistant who manages the CEO's calendar, the IT person who controls system access, these are positional advantages that make you structurally difficult to eliminate. In relationships, this means maintaining friend networks, family connections, and independent identity. The moment your entire emotional security depends on one person, you've created a structural vulnerability that sophisticated operators will exploit. But here's the mastery distinction. This isn't manipulation or disloyalty. You're genuinely valuable to these people, and they're valuable to you. You're creating anti-fragility. The more pressure applied to any single connection point, the more alternative paths you have for support and resource access. The moral high ground paradox. Here's where most people misunderstand Machiavelli completely. They think ruthlessness means abandoning ethics. Wrong. Strategic ruthlessness means defending ethical positions with tactical precision. When you expose corruption, you don't do it emotionally and immediately. You document everything, build an airtight case, identify allies who benefit from the truth, and then strike when your position is unassailable. This is righteous ruthlessness. When you confront a manipulator, you don't attack their character. You calmly describe their specific actions, the impact on others, and the consequences going forward. You've taken the moral high ground while demonstrating strategic capability. This combination is devastating because they can't paint you as the aggressor. Machiavelli understood that appearing virtuous while being strategic is more powerful than appearing strategic while being virtuous. The mastery is genuine virtue deployed with tactical intelligence. The ultimate positioning. Become structurally indispensable. The highest form of Machiavellian mastery is positioning yourself so that harming you harms everyone who might consider harming you. This is beyond deterrence. This is making cooperation with you the only rational choice. How you achieve this? You become the person who connects valuable people to each other. You become the knowledge holder of critical systems. You become the problem solver for issues that affect multiple stakeholders. You engineer situations where your success is structurally tied to others' success. This is why Machiavelli stayed politically relevant even after exile. His knowledge of Florentine politics, his relationships across Italian city-states, and his analytical frameworks made him too valuable to ignore. They couldn't afford not to engage with him. You're implementing this when a colleague who previously competed with you suddenly needs your expertise on a high-visibility project. Mastery you. Collaborate brilliantly, ensuring your contributions are visible and that you're now connected to their success. You've converted an adversary into someone invested in your reputation. Let's take everything you've learned and watch it operate in 3 real scenarios. Notice how the same person, with the same values, produces completely different outcomes with Machiavellian awareness. Scenario 1. The workplace credit thief. Your manager consistently presents your ideas as team achievements in leadership meetings, but introduces their own ideas with, "I've been developing this approach" language. You've noticed this pattern for months. Old you response. You work harder, hoping undeniable performance will be recognized. You mention it to your manager privately. "I'd appreciate if you could mention my contributions specifically." They say they will. Nothing changes. You become resentful and eventually burn out or quit. Outcome. You leave with nothing. Your manager keeps advancing. The organization loses a strong performer but doesn't know why. New you response. You recognize the pattern as strategic extraction, not oversight. You implement protection level 2 with strategic documentation. You start CCing leadership on project updates for visibility. You use language like building on the framework I introduced in March in meetings. When your manager presents team wins, you immediately follow with, "Happy to detail my specific role if useful for future similar projects." Outcome. Leadership begins receiving direct information about your contributions. Your manager recognizes you've closed the extraction path. They either correct the behavior or you've built the documentation trail that supports your next move, internal transfer or external offer with strong references. Mastery response. Before the situation deteriorates, you've already implemented Level 3 alliance building. You've cultivated a relationship with your skip-level manager through occasional insight emails on industry trends. You've connected peers in other departments with resources they needed. When your manager takes credit, you're not dependent on that single relationship for advancement. 6 months later, when a new role opens in another division, the director reaches out to you directly because you've been on their radar as a strategic thinker. Your manager's credit-taking becomes irrelevant. You've transcended that battlefield entirely. Scenario 2. The manipulative relationship pattern. You're in a relationship where your partner consistently threatens to leave during conflicts, knowing it triggers your abandonment fear. You always apologize first, even when they were wrong, just to stabilize the relationship. The pattern repeats. Old you response. You believe love means always compromising. You tell yourself they're just emotional, they don't mean it. You work on yourself, maybe if you're better, they won't need to threaten leaving. The threats continue because they work. Outcome. You become smaller and smaller. Your boundaries erode. Eventually, you either leave devastated, or you stay in a power dynamic that destroys your self-respect. New you response. You recognize the threat pattern as a calculated test of your boundaries. Next time it happens, you employ protection level 2 immediate response. If you're genuinely considering leaving, let's discuss that seriously. If you're trying to end this argument, let's find a better approach together. But I'm not negotiating under threats anymore. Watch what happens. If they're doing it unconsciously, this creates awareness and the behavior stops. If they're doing it strategically, they'll escalate once, extinction burst, and then either correct or reveal themselves as unwilling to operate within reciprocal boundaries. Outcome: the relationship either evolves into genuine partnership or you've identified an incompatibility before investing more years. Either outcome protects you. Mastery response: you've built structural independence from level 3, strong friend networks, maintained hobbies, financial autonomy, secure sense of self outside the relationship. When threats come, they have no leverage. You're genuinely prepared to leave if necessary, and that authentic non-neediness changes the entire dynamic. More importantly, you've established from the beginning of relationships that you reward direct communication and connection, but you distance from manipulation. This filters out manipulators early because you're not a compatible target. You've architected your relational environment so that dramatic tactics don't work on you structurally. Scenario 3. The social undermining. Someone in your friend group consistently makes subtle digs at you in front of others, jokes about your career, your appearance, your choices, always with "just kidding" cover. Others laugh uncomfortably. You laugh it off because you don't want to seem oversensitive. Old you response. You internalize it. Maybe they're right. Maybe you're too sensitive. You start avoiding social situations where this person will be present. You never address it because you don't want drama. The behavior continues with others. Outcome: you've shrunk your social world. Your confidence has eroded. The underminer has established dominance in the group dynamic. New you response. You recognize this as a strategic positioning behavior. They're elevating themselves by lowering you, testing if you'll defend your position. Protection level 2. The next time it happens, you respond immediately with calibrated firmness. That's the second comment about my career tonight. I'm not sure what you're trying to accomplish, but I'd rather we just enjoy the evening. You've done 3 things simultaneously. Called out the pattern. It's not isolated. Questioned their motive, putting them on defense, and repositioned toward the group norm. We're here to enjoy each other. The group dynamic just shifted. You're no longer the target. They're now explaining themselves. Outcome: they either apologize and stop the behavior was working until you applied consequences, or they escalate and reveal themselves as actually hostile, which makes the group dynamics clear. Other group members now see you as someone who handles challenges directly, but without unnecessary drama. Your social position strengthened. Mastery response: you've implemented level 3 perception architecture. Long before this incident, you've been the person in the friend group who connects people, who remembers birthdays, who shows up when things are difficult. You've built social capital systematically. When the undermining happens, you don't even need to defend yourself directly. Other friends intervene. Hey, that's not cool. You've engineered a situation where the group enforces your boundaries for you. The underminer is now socially isolated by their own behavior. You maintained the high ground, and the structural relationships protected you automatically. This is Machiavellian mastery. You've designed the environment so that your values and your position align with collective interest. You now understand what Machiavelli was really teaching. And that means you've crossed a threshold that most people never reach. You see the strategic layer of reality operating beneath the surface of normal social interaction. This is significant power, and Machiavelli himself warned about this. Since it is difficult to join them together, it is safer to be feared than to be loved when one of the two must be lacking. But he also wrote about the responsibility of power. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. You have a choice ahead of you. Everything you've learned can be used to protect yourself and others, or it can be used to exploit. The difference isn't in the techniques, it's in the intention and the targets you choose. Strategic ruthlessness directed at predators is protection. Strategic ruthlessness directed at vulnerable people is predation. The techniques are identical. The moral difference is everything. Here's what separates you from actual Machiavellian villains. Your goal is not domination. Your goal is sovereignty, the ability to operate from your values without being crushed by those who don't share them. You're not trying to control others. You're preventing others from controlling you. The moment you use these frameworks to manipulate someone who isn't threatening you, you've become what you were learning to defend against. The moment you deploy strategic extraction on someone who's genuinely cooperating with you, you've betrayed the entire purpose of this knowledge. Machiavelli wrote The Prince as a guide for maintaining power, but he also wrote discourses on Livy about republican virtue and collective flourishing. He understood both individual strategy and collective good. The mastery is holding both simultaneously. Think about the scenarios we just analyzed. In every single one, the Machiavellian response created better outcomes not just for you, but for everyone involved. The credit thief either learned to collaborate genuinely or was routed around. The manipulative partner either evolved into genuine partnership or was freed to find someone compatible. The social underminer either corrected their behavior or was naturally isolated by group dynamics. Strategic ruthlessness in service of genuine values creates accountability and healthier systems. It removes tolerance for exploitation, which means cooperation becomes more valuable than extraction. You're not making the world more brutal, you're making brutality more costly and cooperation more rewarding. You're now part of a small percentage of people who understand the strategic layer consciously. Most people are operating on instinct and social programming. Some are unconsciously manipulative. A few are consciously predatory. And now you're consciously protective. This means you have responsibility to use this awareness ethically. When you see someone being exploited who doesn't understand these dynamics, you have three choices: stay silent, warn them, or model the boundary enforcement they haven't learned yet. Your choice matters. When you catch yourself about to deploy a strategic technique, pause and ask, am I protecting or predating? Is this person actually threatening my position, or am I just feeling competitive? That pause is the difference between wisdom and manipulation. Machiavelli's ultimate insight wasn't about power, it was about clear-sighted reality. He wrote, "How we live is so far removed from how we ought to live, that he who abandons what is done for what ought to be done will rather learn to bring about his own ruin than his preservation." You're not abandoning what ought to be. You're learning to preserve yourself so you can continue working toward what ought to be. There's no contradiction between strategic intelligence and genuine ethics. The contradiction is between naive idealism and effective idealism. The world needs people who understand power dynamics and choose to use that understanding protectively. What the world doesn't need is more naive victims or more conscious predators. You're becoming the third option. You're not the same person who started this video. 25 minutes ago, you were operating in a world where you thought good intentions protected you, where you believed fairness was universal, where you assumed transparency built trust automatically. Now you see the game that's been playing around you your entire life. You see the strategic layer. You recognize the tests disguised as requests. You understand that boundaries without consequences are suggestions. You know that some people are unconsciously manipulative, some are consciously predatory, and you've decided to be consciously protective. This is the transformation Machiavelli offered 500 years ago, and it's exactly as relevant now as it was then. The world will break you if you insist on playing by rules that nobody else follows. Not because you're weak, but because you're strategically blind. But now, you have vision. You recognize when someone is testing your boundaries. You know the difference between genuine collaboration and strategic extraction. You understand that mercy without accountability is exploitation training. You've learned that the moral high ground requires tactical intelligence to hold. Think about the next time someone tries the old patterns on you. They're going to take credit for your work, or threaten instability to control you, or undermine you to position themselves. And instead of absorbing it like you used to, you're going to recognize it instantly. You're going to feel that calm clarity. Oh, this is a strategic probe. They're testing if I've established boundaries. And you're going to respond in real time with calibrated precision, not emotionally, not reactively, strategically. You'll correct the behavior, establish the consequence, and maintain your position, all while appearing completely reasonable to anyone observing. They're going to be confused because the old playbook isn't working. You've changed the rules on them, and here's what they don't understand. You haven't become cruel. You've become clear. You haven't become manipulative. You've become conscious. You haven't become heartless. You've become strategically intelligent. The truly powerful people, the ones who maintain their integrity while thriving in competitive environments, all understand what you now understand. They just don't talk about it publicly because strategic advantage requires strategic opacity. But you've joined that group. You're operating on the same level now. Machiavelli's final lesson, the one that gets lost in all the controversy about his ruthlessness, is this. Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception, but I'd modify that for protective purposes. Never attempt to win by combat what can be won by positioning. You don't need to destroy people. You just need to position yourself so advantageously that attacking you costs more than cooperating with you. You don't need to manipulate. You just need to make strategic awareness and strong boundaries your default operating system. The people who try to exploit you, they're about to encounter a version of you they don't recognize. You look the same, you sound the same, but the old patterns that used to work, they're going to hit a wall they can't see but definitely feel. And the people who genuinely cooperate with you, they're about to experience an even better version of you. Because when you're not constantly being extracted from, when you're not spending energy managing manipulators, when your boundaries protect your resources, you have so much more to give to people who deserve it. This is what Machiavelli really understood. Strategic ruthlessness isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming free. Free to be generous with the right people. Free to be vulnerable with safe people. Free to build and create without constantly defending. That freedom requires protection, and that protection requires the willingness to be strategically ruthless with those who would exploit your goodness. The world hasn't gotten more brutal. You've just stopped volunteering to be its victim, and that changes absolutely everything. In the next video, we're going deeper. We're exploring the psychological patterns that manipulators use to make you doubt your own reality, gaslighting, reality distortion, and the strategic techniques to maintain your psychological sovereignty when someone is trying to rewrite your truth. You'll learn to trust yourself again, even under sophisticated manipulation. But for now, remember this. Machiavelli wasn't teaching you to abandon virtue. He was teaching you to protect it. The world breaks those who can't defend what they've built. You're no longer in that category. You're not prey anymore. You're protected. You're positioned. You're powerful. And most importantly, you're awake. Welcome to reality. Let's never go back to sleep.